The only thing missing from all of this stuff is the USS Arizona stuff, because it was put in an auction at my show at Peabody. And I can't remember the year or the anniversary, but Howard gave it to Heritage Auctions, and it was all of the documents that went for that show. Is there any other things you want to mention about that, about Arizona, that concert?
There was various different opening acts. I don't know if there was jugglers or fire eaters.
Yeah, wasn't that the one where he had all these acts prior to it, and then Elvis came out in 20 minutes and left?
Exactly.
Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah, Elvis only did about 6 songs, so they had to fill out the time. People took the time to attend, pay their $2.75 or whatever the fee was for the ticket price. You didn't want them to rip up the place, saying that too short of a show. Mm-hmm. So they did have probably about 4 or 5. They had a comedian. They had, if we find the names of, you could say it was jugglers. It was a wide variety of different entertainment to make it a nice afternoon with Elvis.
After the '61 Hawaii show, didn't do any touring or anything. He did the movies. He did the '68 comeback special. Then he went to Vegas in '69 and did those sellout shows. And then it was pretty obvious that he wanted to get back into live performances and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So what we have here now, folks, is really amazing stuff. And this is got to be some of my favorite pieces here. Because like you and I had talked about, it'd be cool to have just one of these things from these tours, because these are tour agenda sheets, and you could talk about it, I'll let you, but putting these in a frame and then put a picture of Elvis from that tour, that would be so cool. So anyway, why don't you talk about these and show them, because this is only, these are the ones, these are all legal size, but there were actually shorter ones where the bottom was cut off, and I think the ones that were cut off was because there was no Hilton, there was no performance. That's why the shorter ones were, remember how we found some that were cut off?
Yeah, it was the same version, but it was just the last 3 inches were cut.
Okay.
Most of these documents were all letter-sized papers, so when we came across some legal papers that were folded in these letter files, it really unveiled some really neat things.
So explain what these are so that everybody knows.
Obviously, this is to show once the tour was fully established and all the dates were there. It's the listing of the concerts that includes the day, city, the building name, and showtime, whether it was an evening show or the occasional afternoon show. What's really neat about this one here, this is talking about the tour from April to May '75 that started in Macon, Georgia, ended in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. This particular itinerary is unique and really cool for 2 reasons. I'll do this reason first. On the bottom, where it confirms tour sold out, entire concert production presentation by Elvis, tour direction, the Colonel. But it has the Hilton Hotel logo with a little advertisement. Hilton Hotel, March 18th through April 1st, Las Vegas Hilton, special concerts. So they had, certainly by the time they were in Vegas doing the March '75 shows, they had already established where they were going in April. So not only were these sold out dates, of course, but at the top of this it says, "Sent to you, compliments of the Colonel," which is really neat. And so
not all of them had that, though.
This was the only one.
Yeah, that was the one we found.
That.
Yeah.
But there also were similar documents to this for the tour, the next tour that began in Huntsville, Alabama, May 30th, '75, ended Memphis, one of the hometown shows, June 10th, '75, and then also the July tour, beginning in Oklahoma City, ending in Asheville. So there was 3 different tours represented with this format, which is really just a really cool document. Here's another one that doesn't have the message from the Colonel. Here's one on a different colored paper. It seems this is more aged.
Yeah, for some reason, and I think it's the same year.
Same exact tour
as the other one where the paper isn't aged.
But this is yellowed, whereas the other ones stayed perfectly white.
Had to be something to do with how he stored it or whatever.
Yeah, and it's a little frayed on the top, but I kind of like that. It reminds me of the Old West when you have the
adds authenticity.
Indeed. Yeah, and then here's the May to June tour, and then finally the July dates. And actually on this one on July, it also estimates the number of attendees for each show. Apparently the room in Oklahoma City held 16,000 fans. The next day, Terre Haute, Indiana, 10,000, 116 fans. Cleveland, Ohio, Richfield Coliseum, that was a big building, 19,069 people at the Richfield Coliseum. Now, they don't call it the Richfield Coliseum here, they call it the Cleveland Coliseum, but it definitely was the Richfield Coliseum. Yeah. Anyway, interesting stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, I thought this was really cool enough where, I had to go and buy this book just to get, because this stuff was just laying in there, all folded up and everything. And so, in addition, and this booklet here just basically has anything that, was, like here is this is some kind of a March the '74 tour, where they had to say everything was sold out. Not really sure what the purpose of all this was, but that this is different than the itineraries. And then there's these sheets here are from Boxcar Enterprises and showing what they sold at the shows, at the concerts. So that's pretty cool, like the totals, the amount of money. And for me, again, from the collecting aspect of this was great for me because when I went through it, kind of answered a lot of questions about memorabilia that we've come across, over the years. And here's another thing that happened that I thought was really cool was a lot of you people already know about this album here, okay? Having Fun with Elvis on Stage. Now this is the original. This is actually my copy. This is the original one on orange label. And in the back it says this was released in 1974, okay? Now, when we were looking at the documents, we found in 1975, which I thought was a little confusing, we actually saw documents where in addition to buttons like this and tour books and photos, there was an album listing. And it had to be Having Fun with Elvis on Stage. When was the album actually made, the Boxcar one?
The Boxcar version apparently was made August of '74. So the first opportunity on tour would have been the infamous College Park, Maryland shows, September 27th and 28th, '74. That's the story where apparently Elvis was in such bad shape that he fell to his knees when he was getting out of the limo.
Oh.
And now, recently, video has come out of that first show, Elvis wearing the peacock suit. And had I been in the audience, it really wasn't that much of a disaster as it has been told. I think I would have been satisfied with Elvis's performance that evening, but in looking at it, you can tell something was going on. But it was an interesting show. But at that show, you were able to buy the LP of Having Fun on Stage. This is where Al kept track of each tour in terms of the vendors that sold the different pieces of merchandise. So Operations Manual, Elvis Presley Show, October 1974 tour. So here's this, the very next tour, April of '75, June of '75, July of '75. It's all right here. And the evolution of selling these boxcar items, it seems like for the fall of '74 tour, they only sold the record. But by the time they managed to get to April of '75, the Macon tour opening, they had both the 8-track tape as well as the LP. So at the concerts in 1975 through the summer, you had the choice at the concert to either buy the Boxcar LP for $5 or the 8-track. So they consistently sold the LP and the 8-track for that April to May tour, the May to June tour, and then at the beginning of the July tour. But when we dug into those notes, they only had enough inventory for those first few dates: Oklahoma City, Terre Haute, Indiana, Cleveland, and I think it was in Charleston, West Virginia. They completely ran out of the LP and the 8-track, and they never replenished it. That was it.
Okay, so then it's for sure, then we can safely say that the Boxcar LP came out first, before RCA put it out.
Yes.
Because that's what I remember.
Yes.
That's exactly how I rember it.
Boxcar in August of '74. The RCA LP probably was manufactured in October of '74.
Yeah, it was quick. It was only out for a little bit of time in the concerts. Okay. Do we have numbers or anything you wanted to talk about, or like how many were sold?
If I can find the page real quick. Oh, here we go.
Okay.
Going toward that last tour of 1974, going from College Park, Maryland, ending in Abilene, Texas, on October 9th. For instance, let's look at that last show in Abilene, Texas. They sold, actually they ran out of the record toward the end of the tour, but in its place they sold some special items. Dogs, turtles, and bears. They had a few stuffed animals that they sold in Abilene.
Wow.
For $5 a piece.
Turtles?
They sold
Elvis turtles. Stuffed turtles. Wow. I've never even heard of that.
So 16.
I know about the teddy bears, because remember how we were surprised about that? Because somebody had said
Why
that
would it be a hound dog?
he would throw teddy bears out in the audience on tour, not in Vegas. I don't know if it was in Vegas.
In Vegas.
Yeah, but he threw out teddy bears. And we found documents of an order for teddy bears. Mm-hmm. I remember that now. So
Yeah.
And we found the invoice for the giant teddy bear. Remember the giant teddy bear at the hotel that you see the picture of? I'll show it. It sat in the lobby. We have the receipt that they paid for that giant teddy bear.
Yeah, so instead of, toward the end of that last tour of 74, they ran out of the Boxcar LP those last few days, but they came up with some new things to sell, such as dogs, turtles, bears. They sold 16 of them for $5 a piece.
So that's got to be rare, boy. That's why you don't see them. They only had 16 of them? I wonder how many of those they made.
And instead of the poster that they sold for $2, they had a few mounted posters that you could buy for $5.
Yeah, I wonder what that is. I know posters. I know I think I've seen just about every Boxcar poster.
So only 8 mounted posters were sold at $5 a piece, the premium. However, 262 $2 posters were sold. So people just wanted to roll up the poster and take it with them and save the $3 apparently.
And we know the large album is the one over your shoulder there. That's the one in the star. Okay, and then the mini one is the same tour book except smaller.
Indeed. So that's just one example of the souvenirs, how they, they'd run out of things and have to replenish it with different items to make the supply and the variety available for every audience.
All right, so since we're on souvenirs, let's jump into this real quick. We were just talking about the belt buckle. Okay, now tell everybody about the belt buckle, what we just found out.
So
this is 77, right, the belt buckle?
This was one of the last new items sold during Elvis's lifetime at the concert, and this was the highest priced item at $10.
Right.
Most every other item for sale was maybe $1, $2, $3, $5. The scarves cost $5. This was $10.
Wow.
And we have the paperwork here of where they were manufactured, for how much.
And there it is. There's the paperwork right there.
A company in Rockford, Illinois called SpecCast.
Yep. Which is, by the way, on the very back, it says Rockford, Illinois, SpecCast.
The invoice date is March 31st, 77, and it's indicating that they shipped these 1,500 belt buckles to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, which happened to be, that's the day Elvis was scheduled to be doing a show in Baton Rouge. The audience was seated, the governor was in the front row, and Elvis was at the hotel, and he couldn't go on. They canceled that show and the next 3 dates, and they did those dates 2 months later. So they shipped all these belt buckles from Illinois to Louisiana just to have to sit on them, and then they eventually did start selling them at the next tour that started in Greensboro, North Carolina, April 21st.
There you go.
They sold them for $10 a piece. Do you want to know how much they paid to have them manufactured?
Do I?
Well, thank you for asking, Michael, because the answer to that is the unit price was $1.
$1, and they sold them for 10.
They did.
10 times their money. Yeah. Who said the Colonel and Al weren't top of their game, right?
So these belt buckles were only sold from April 21st, 77 to probably the last show in Indianapolis, June 26th. So a very rare item.
Then we were talking briefly about the hats. And here I have this is an authentic banner, for the summer festival. All right, and you can even see the International Hotel symbol on it. Anyway, so the hats, how often were these sold? They were, according to the invoices, they were hats that were sold up to what year? Yeah. I mean, they stopped at a certain point, because I never saw them. I only thought they were in Vegas.
As did I, but in some of these concert on-tour documents, it showed they did have a limited supply of certain hats in certain cities. In flipping through these in the last few minutes, they might have only had 10 or 15 to sell at a show. So it wasn't like it was a very popular item, but
So they might have been.
it was a rare item.
So they might have been left over, right? They could have made these hats for Vegas, and then when he went on tour, they said, hell, we'll take them with. Now this is an actual scarf, and I showed this on the Elvis on Tour show. But this is one of the scarves that were sold as souvenirs, and we found the documents that it said they sold this many scarves or that many scarves. So they weren't just in Las Vegas; they were actually all around when Elvis was touring, I guess. Obviously, these are from Al Dvorin's collection. And what's interesting about the scarf here is the story I was telling you before we started about somebody had sent some kind of an email saying something about the scarves and the signature scarves. And I had said to them, well, Elvis usually has scarves made just for him. And that was true. I know that. I think Charlie Hodge told me that. Joe Esposito told me that. But they also told me that when they didn't have the scarves, if they didn't have them in on time when he was touring, when he ran out of the scarves, he used these. So they would just go to the souvenir stand and grab a batch of these. So when I said that, when I claimed that, what the situation was, somebody proved it. Somebody said, look, here's the blue scarf, and here's a picture of him wearing it. And sure enough, there was Elvis with the scarf, and you can see this signature on it. What did we say the scarf sold for?
$5 or $10.
Yeah, I think it was 10, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, the belt buckle was 10.
The belt buckle was 10.
The scarf was either 5 or 10.
You're right. You're right. But now, they're like $200 or $300. But and especially if you can get one like this, because like this one is like brand new, except for me touching it. But anyway, so to me, that's one of the great things about all of this information that we found was finding out, some of the details of the items, the collector's items that I've been dealing with for years. Let's talk about this, Steve. These are cool. Let's talk about these are Al Dvorin's personal itinerary books. And why don't you talk about those?
So these are just dynamite, going over the whole tour itinerary. But of course, when you're on the road and a problem arises with transportation or lodging, you need to have the contact names and phone numbers where you're at. So in an average itinerary, it talks about schedule for show members, what time to leave the hotel, what time to get on the bus, what time to arrive at the venue. And some of these, this is wild, to start the tour in April of '75, going to Macon, Georgia, the plan was to arrive the morning of April 24th at 4:30 in the morning to get to the hotel and start their day leading up to the show that evening. So they were on the run at all hours of the day, overnight and everything. And but yeah, contacts about the buses, limousines, hotels, directions, where the airport is, who's in charge of the local transportation, and these type of questions, especially if you're Al Dvorin, you need to be Johnny on the spot with the answers. And so that's why these documents here helped Al be able to answer a person's question.
And you could tell they were his because there's his name right there at the bottom. And another thing, too, if you look carefully at these things, Steve, aren't they basically just miniature documents of this stuff?
Oh, sure. Yeah. You
all of this stuff in here, kind of for that particular tour, it's all shrunk down and put here, because even the opening thing here is all of the show times and the locations for that particular tour. Another thing I learned too that I didn't know much about with tours was Elvis did as many as 5 tours a year, right? 4 to 5 tours, and they were numbered, like tour number 1, tour number 2. This guy never rested. I mean, after seeing all these documents, I knew Elvis toured a lot. When you look at the artists nowadays, they'll come out and they'll do one show, right? And then they'll go another place, like a week later or whatever. My wife and I just went and saw Clint Black, right? And Clint was in, 1 week he was here, another week he was there. It wasn't like the Elvis was almost everywhere every day. Mm-hmm. Like this one tour here, Summer Festival Tour, July 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th. These are every single day he did a show. I mean, I know, you guys all know this. I think every Elvis fan knows this. But when you actually have it in your hands and you look at this and you go, how did this guy survive? Then all of a sudden, the whole drug thing makes sense. Because you know how you are when you get real tired. You take something to pick you up, right? And I'm not talking about illegal drugs. You just, now you can get something over the counter to pep you up. If you can't go to sleep, you take a sleeping pill. You can get that over the counter too. They even advertise on TV. Well, Elvis didn't have it. That wasn't how it was back then. So they gave him, he had a doctor, Dr. Nick.
I think Dr. Nick gets a bad rap.
You still have to wonder, even with the power that he had, seeing what he saw, that there could have been some intervention. I know Sonny West, when we talked with Sonny, and I've talked with him many times, I remember him not exactly being a big fan of Dr. Nick. I remember him telling stories of how, not painting a bad picture of him, but just saying, Dr. Nick should have done this or should have done that. He should have been more careful or this or that.
I think Dr. Nick was probably in the same position of Sonny and Red, though.
Yeah, right,
you can
exactly.
only say too much to Elvis. Elvis just say, "Look, there's the door."
Just like in the, This Is Elvis, the documentary, when the one bodyguard, I can't remember his name, who's sitting with Sonny.
Dave.
How do you...
Hebler.
There you go. How do you protect a man from himself? That's what he says. Because if you remember in the movie, a reporter says, well, if you loved him so much and cared about him and being his bodyguards, why didn't you protect him? How do you protect a man from himself? I mean, that's absolutely true. You can only do so much with a person, and it's their own doing what they do with their lives. And I know that personally because I just lost my brother earlier this year. You can say things and do this and that, but they have to make the decision. It's their life. And unfortunately, Elvis, we all know what happened. But anyway, getting back to these little books, they're just amazing, all of the details. And it's funny because, like I said, I think a lot of this paperwork is in here.
If I may add something, and this is something that I hadn't noticed in seeing these over the last few weeks, it even talks about the schedule for moving the equipment and luggage. So, for example, Jackson, Mississippi, the benefit show for the tornado victims, May 5th, 1975. The plan is be at the Jackson airport at 10 a.m. to load all the luggage to take to the Coliseum Ramada Inn. Next, take all equipment to the State Fair Coliseum. After all equipment is unloaded, truck is parked until 9:30 that evening. Load the equipment. Take all equipment to airport and load it on the plane. The truck is then parked at the motel until following morning. And then, next day, repeat the same process in a different city.
And so all you young people out there, if there's any young viewers, try to imagine this is your phone. Back then, this was his iPhone. He shrunk down all the paperwork so he could put it in his pocket, and then if he needed something, instead of punching it up, there it was, page after page. I mean, think of all the trouble it took, right? To take these documents and shrink them down.
You did a paper cutter.
Right, and then you had to paper cut it, and then you put plastic around it. I wonder if Al did this. Al must have done this. I'll have to ask Howard, but
he did a good job on the 90-degree angles. I must give credit where credit is due.
It is funny too. Like when a correction was made, did you see the correction here? Look at 8:30. They changed the time from or added a time. I don't know, what is that?
Okay, this is interesting. So what this document says, this is in reference to the Huntsville, Alabama. Unusually, Elvis did 5 shows in a row in the same city. The opening night, May 30th, 2 shows on May 31st, and then what ended up being 2 shows on Sunday, June 1st. So May 30th, May 31st, June 1st. Well, apparently, they only planned for 4 shows. They scheduled the Sunday matinee on June 1st, but since the demand was so high for those 4 shows, they decided after the fact to add the 5th show. And that's why there was 5 shows in Huntsville, not just 4. But the original plan was 4. So that's something new that we just uncovered.
So that's cool. Like I said, again, this stuff is history. This stuff is historical, and it tells a story that normally you could just guess. I mean, sure, there's things we had to guess about, on things we found, because we found, documents and papers and invoices and all kinds of stuff, and we had to sit there and go, well, what was this for? What was that for? The albums, they said, we knew it had to be having fun with Elvis on stage. The 8-track had to be that. Scarves were easy. The hard part was determining tour books. because it would say tour book number 1, tour book number 2, and you're like, wow, what book is that? You know, it's almost impossible to figure it out. But another thing all these documents does is it tells you where all this stuff came from, how much money was made from tours. I mean, it's amazing. I believe, I can't remember what concert I saw, but there was one concert where it said that on souvenirs alone, they made $38,000 on souvenirs. And remember, the souvenirs were $1 to $5 at best. You know, can you imagine how many souvenirs at one show could generate $38,000? I don't have that document here. If I could find it and post it, I'll show you. But it's amazing. But this is all Elvis on tour. It's not necessarily his private life, although you can see bits and pieces of his private life in here when you kind of look between the pages. Wouldn't you say? I mean, as far as his tour stuff, the things that he had to do.
Well, I mean, it's just the same routine regarding, you know, hotel, airplane, and I don't know how much the documents reveal of that aspect of it, but it's certainly exciting, though. I mean, and that's what Elvis gave him the drive to do. He liked connecting with his fans, being out in the audience, and even though that seems like that enthusiasm might have waned by the last year and a half, but at least through '75, I think Elvis was out on tour and he enjoyed it. That would be my assessment.
Okay, so what do you have here?
All right. This is the show lineup for the Memphis Benefit Show in 1961, February 25th. And so it describes the opening acts. An MC by the name of Nip Nelson, Frankie Trent, who Elvis did use as an opening act in the 50s, Boots Randolph, the famous saxophone player, a group called Ashtons and Shirley, Floyd Kramer, the pianist, Nip Nelson again to do a little bit of humor, I suppose. The Jordanaires sang a few songs. Brother Dave Gardner, the famous comedian that I think Elvis and the boys enjoyed. I remember reading Sonny talking about Dave Gardner. But a name that I'm sorry to say I'm not familiar with, but Robert, he got excited.
Well, not too excited.
Okay. But a famous guy, Georgie Jessel, actually performed at the stage with Elvis for this Memphis Benefit Show before Elvis came onto the stage to do the show. So this is just the show lineup, but now seeing this for the first time, there's a little more detail on the second page here, talking about Frankie Trent. I guess his talent was being a tap dancer. Straw and Pink Spot. Oh, I guess the spotlights to use on these different acts, which colors to put these folks in. Boots Randolph on the saxophone. Ashtons and Shirley were acrobats. So Elvis had acrobats as one of his opening acts.
No wonder he was only on for 20 minutes. 2-hour show with mostly the opening acts.
Nip Nelson, the MC, was also the comedian. The Jordanaires, of course, did their vocal stylings. Dave Gardner, comedy. George Jessel is... here's what it refers to George Jessel. While George Jessel is on stage overhead, the side lights off and he is in white head spot. While he is talking, large band is taken off and Presley musicians set up. Entire stage blacked out during this period. When George Jessel says, "Here is Elvis Presley," then turn the spotlights immediately to the stage, and at the same time turn off the stage overhead lights and side lights and olivettes. During Presley, use color throughout. No solid white at any time. Use color according to mood of song.
Wow,
Isn't
that's
this
cool.
dynamite?
Yeah, that's cool. So Love Me Tender was blue, All Shook Up was red. Yeah, that's cool.
And reading on, somebody was given credit as being a choreographer. Elvis's cousin, Gene Smith, is listed as
Gene Smith
being in charge of choreography.
Related to Billy? I would imagine Billy Smith.
You had Billy. I'm not 100% sure of the parents, if they're brothers or if they were double first cousins or first cousins. But this was really cool. And then right following behind that is the listing of what everybody made that night in Memphis.
This you should hear, folks.
Yeah. So
This is interesting.
So the big name is Georgie Jessel, and he did make $1,000
Right.
in 1961. That's good money for a few minutes.
And you didn't
work.
know that because you're too young. But
Right.
Georgie Jessel was a very, very well-known comedian, I believe.
Well, the other familiar players, Boots Randolph, a legend.
Right.
He only got paid $50. Floyd Kramer, another legend, $50. The comedian Nip Nelson made $275. The Ashtons and Shirley group made $300. Frankie Trent made $150. The Jordanaires, a group of 4 men, they made $200. So they took away $50 each.
Wow.
Scotty Moore, $150.
Wow.
DJ Fontana made $150.
Is Bill Black on there?
Bill Black's name is not on this.
Oh.
Maybe Bill didn't make it to the show. We'd have to do a little research on that. They did pay a gentleman named Brad Suggs $50. And then Brother Dave Gardner, who later became quite famous, apparently he lent his services for free that night. He didn't make anything. And so total talent costs to put the show together, $3,267. And then I guess Al Dvorin made $500 for that, his efforts promoting the Memphis
and well deserved too, probably. So these are all stuff Al was a part of. That's awesome. That's great. Was there anything about this show? I mean, I can't remember if we saw any paperwork about the 3 a.m.
No,
because the thing was the show. The reason I bring this up, folks, is because the show was last minute. If I remember correctly, they added it. I don't know. Maybe the Colonel lost real bad that day and decided to throw another show and talk to Elvis into it. I have no idea. Maybe you might have some insight into that. But these posters were really cheaply made. And I remember somebody telling me, I can't remember who it was, somebody in the know, had said that these posters were made very fast. Oh, it was Al. That's right. I remember Al because he had one on display when I first met him. He said that they made these posters real fast, like he had to call up a printer in Las Vegas and say, listen, we need a poster, and they sent over a picture of Elvis or took it over there or whatever, and this is the poster. And then they made the little placards,
right,
which are pink, green, blue, whatever, and those were put under the doors of the hotel rooms, and they were in the restaurant and everything. But this is one of the posters. Was there anything about this in there?
In all of these documents, it really went over the on-tour shows. There was very little about Las Vegas in all of these documents, if I recall correctly.
That's right. You're right. Yeah.
But when it comes to these 3 a.m. shows, they occasionally did happen. From what I recall, usually they added one of these extra concerts to benefit a local charity, usually a children's hospital. So that example was from September 2nd, 1972, toward the end of his month-long run, where I think he did 63 shows between August 4th when they opened and September 4th when they closed. The following year in Lake Tahoe, they did a 3 a.m. Mother's Day show. I think that was May 13th, 73.
Yes, I remember that. You know what I was thinking is that maybe because of the fact that the show was last minute, and they threw it together, how much paperwork can you do? I mean, if anything, we would have found the invoice for the posters, which would have been great.
But that's a good question. Adding that 3 a.m. show on September 2nd, did the Hilton have to write up new contracts, not just for Elvis, but also for all the band members participating in that show?
Right. I wonder if that's the case. And maybe not. Maybe if it was last minute, they didn't have time. And maybe that's what, that's what all it was.
Maybe if it was for charity, they didn't have to go through the normal formalities of paperwork.
Another great thing in here was Al kept a lot of old newspaper clippings. And boy, was I happy to see a couple of these things here. There's a big one and then there's a trimmed one. Here's the big one. Okay, I don't know how much you're going to see of this, folks, but we're going to try to show you. This is Chicago American newspaper. And I know a lot of people don't even know that newspaper. I know Michael doesn't know it. But before the Sun-Times and the Tribune, there was the Chicago American. So look at this spread they did in 1957 of Elvis at the amphitheater. And you can see shots of Elvis in the gold lame suit, okay?
Complete with the gold lame pants.
Right, with the pants, which later on you told me that in another show he didn't like the sparkles falling off the pants or something, so he actually went to darker pants in another show. But here is all the girls screaming and the fans screaming. There's actually a picture down here with him and a hound dog kissing fans, and fans fainting and signing autographs. And this is just cool for Chicago. If I was a Chicago historian, this should be in a museum in the city where people could see that. Maybe it's still in the archives, I don't know. But then also here is another piece of this, because unless this is a different day, but I notice the pictures are the same, but they're different. Here is the picture that's the same. Okay, if you look at that, those pictures are pretty much the same as what's on the other page. But when you look at the second half, the pictures change slightly. And I don't know what that's all about. I don't know if there were two editions, maybe?
So newspapers, didn't they have a morning edition?
Right, a morning and
afternoon update.
Right, so that's got to be what it is. But, I mean, let's face it, that is so cool seeing Elvis in the gold lame suit. And I had always heard, that when he was in Chicago, he wore it there. And I wasn't sure where he wore it. I mean, I don't know. Did he ever have a TV appearance like that? I don't know. I can't remember. This here, I got to show to the collectors, okay? All you collectors out there, especially album collectors like me, are going to love this. But this is so hard to open. This is 1971, all right, from October 29th, okay? And obviously Elvis was, can you tell us why he was there or when he was there?
Well, he was about to start a tour in Minneapolis starting on November 5th. So this was...
okay.
He finished in Vegas in early September 71.
Okay.
And then the tour started November 5th.
Because this apparently is a review or something. Because look at this. If you open it up, here's this huge spread. And it even has a picture of Elvis from That's the Way It Is. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you have this in here. I don't know the whole details. I'd have to read it, but I would imagine it's talking about maybe the movie. I don't know, or a future date or whatever. But what I thought, and here I got to show the collectors, because I thought this was so cool when I saw it. Right there, look at that. That is an ad for Elvis Records. Mm. Look at that. And it's a special. I don't know what it is. It's some kind of a special for... I don't know, for a concert special, or I don't know, it's an Elvis special. But look, you could buy an Elvis record for $3 and was it $3.37. Boy, those were the days, because those records are sure worth a hell of a lot more than $3.37 now, that's for sure. But I think it's cool because they even have the box set, the Worldwide Gold Award Hits Volume 2.
Wow.
And the other sides in there. But it's just, as a collector, as a fan of records, this should be also in a frame.
Madison Square Garden, we actually have the details of where they stayed, the New York Hilton. They went through LaGuardia Airport to travel to New York to start that June 72 tour, that famous tour. They had Greyhound buses and limousines and names of the security and the concessions. Al Grant at Madison Square Garden was in charge of being the point person for the concessions. So very interesting stuff, but also it has the schedule of the rehearsal starting on the day before, June 8th, arriving into town. On Friday, June 9th, the afternoon of the first show, was a rehearsal at Madison Square Garden itself. The Hilton Hotel is where Elvis was, along with J.D. and the Stamps, Kathy Westmoreland and the Sweet Inspirations. So while Elvis and the musicians and the backup singers were with Elvis at the Hilton Hotel, the Joe Gershow Group, Jackie Kahane, the Inspiration musicians, and the Joe Malin Orchestra. Joe Malin, I do not know who that is, but they were at Madison Square Garden doing their own rehearsal. And
I wonder if they were in Chicago too, because I don't remember the Joe Gershow Orchestra in Chicago. Was he there?
Okay. That's a great question. So maybe this Joe Malin Orchestra was contracted for the entire tour, all the way up to June 20th.
Yeah, because I saw him in '72 in Chicago, and he went to Madison Square Garden. right? After Chicago?
No, before.
Or before?
The Madison Square Garden started the tour.
Okay.
And then they meandered to Fort Wayne, Indiana, Evansville, Indiana.
And then Chicago?
Milwaukee, made their way to Chicago for those 3 shows in Chicago.
Because I thought it was cool. I remember when I saw him, not too long afterwards, the Madison Square Garden album came out, and it was the same show. So I remember that, yeah.
It was just a week difference between the Madison Square Garden album and the show you saw on June 17th.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so interesting stuff, and you really can get into the weeds. But also, the June tour had great success from Al Dvorin's perspective, souvenir sales. They sold 43,642 photo albums during that June of 72 tour, 16,098 large posters, almost 12,000 11 by 14 color pictures at $1 a piece. So for that June 72 tour, they only had 3 items: photo albums, large posters, and the 11 by 14 photo. So as the time went on, they had more variety for the fans at these concerts.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I guess what we tried to do, folks, is we tried to find significant pieces of information from his historic concerts, and that's Madison Square Garden. And then we did find some stuff on Memphis, right? 74, the Memphis show. But we found nothing on Aloha from Hawaii, right?
No, not
a thing. There was nothing in there. I don't know why Al didn't have anything on Aloha. That would have been really cool.
But new information, the November 72 tour, before the Aloha, Elvis did finish that tour with 3 concerts at the same HIC arena. Which
dummy me did not know. I only thought he did Aloha from Hawaii and the 61 USS Arizona benefit. That was it. I never knew that he was also in Hawaii in 57, and then he was there in 72, the year before the Aloha from Hawaii concert, in the same place, right?
It was known that the Aloha special was going to happen as early as September of 72. There was one of the press conference was shortly after his Las Vegas run. So when they did the West Coast November tour, after they finished in Long Beach on November 15th, they took a day off, but they took the whole road crew over to Honolulu to do 3 shows, 1 on November 17th and 2 on November 18th. And matter of fact, Robert, you put this LP here. This photo is from the second of the 3 Honolulu 72 shows.
Yeah, this is kind of funny because I always loved this picture. You know, I don't know if this is an Ed Bonja picture or not. Some of you might know out there. If you do, let me know. But I always loved this shot, you know. And there's even in the trailer for the new movie, you remember there's like a brief shot where he puts his arms up with a cape and it flashes 3 suits, which is kind of cool. But this is from Hawaii. And there's a story behind the black suit, right? He didn't like it or something. What was the problem with it?
Well,
why he didn't wear it anymore?
I don't know specifically about this suit, but generally speaking, the fans can see Elvis much better when he was wearing
white. Yeah. So, but anyway, yeah. So that's from Hawaii, and I didn't know that. I had no idea that was from Hawaii. So now every time I see this picture, which I've seen a lot of in the past, I'll know that that's where it's from.
For the Memphis LP, the one recorded at the end of that March 74 tour, March 20th, 74, the famous LP with the Gates of Graceland, or the Gracelands on the front, the Gates of Gracelands on the back of the LP. That's the Memphis 74 show. Well, amongst the different souvenirs sold, they did have a few key rings. So they sold them for $2 a piece. They sold 40 of them at the Memphis March 20th show. The day before, they sold 54 of them in Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
Wow.
And on. You could just take hours and hours going through all these documents. It's amazing.
So we have the keychains and then the scarves is there, and they were $5, right?
You know, sometimes they were $5, but apparently on this March 74 tour, they sold them for $7.50.
$7.50.
And they sold 71 scarves.
The only thing I don't understand is the print that's, what do you call it? It was a picture that was backed or something?
Oh, a mounted poster.
Mounted poster. What the hell is that?
They, like, for instance, the Elvis in the Elvis on Tour suit, the blue poster that has come to be known. Did they sell them rolled or did they sell them flat when you were at the concert?
They were flat. I remember them flat on the table.
And then when you buy it, you'd probably roll it up.
Yes,
during the concert.
That's what I did.
So instead of having a flat, thin poster, I guess maybe they had some sort of a foam board, 1/8 of an inch thick or 1/4 of an inch thick,
and then mounted
it.
Yeah, I guess so.
So they sold them for $5 instead of the $2.
It would be interesting to see what poster.
Indeed.
And we could guess too. So, Okay, anything else on the Memphis thing?
In terms of, they sold of the large books, 1,144 of them. The small books, 1,386 of them. Posters, 1,221. Buttons, 1,883 buttons. And then 71 scarves and 40 key rings.
One last thing I wanted to show everybody, because it's just so cool, is this little item here. This is Al Dvorin's personal ID card for, it says, this is to certify that Al Dvorin, and his name is misspelled by the way, is a member of the Elvis Presley show, MC announcer. Only the main guys got this card, okay? And this thing is priceless. You can't even put a number on it. I know that Ed Banja sold his. I know somebody bought Sonny West's after he passed away. And I don't know about the other people that were a part of the Elvis Presley show. But this is the actual metal gold membership card for Al Dvorin. I want to thank you for coming out and joining us for the show. And this has been fun. I love doing this, and you know that because we spent the 3 days doing it. Yep. All of this stuff that Elvis did with the tours, this explained a lot, because to me, being a big Elvis fan, one thing it explained to me is, or it pointed out and made it obvious, is that these tours, I hate to say it, killed him. That's what my opinion is. He did so many tours that no entertainer alive today would do this many tours. But I think whenever you go into this kind of stuff, you see how much Elvis Presley went through, what he went through in his life that led him down the path to where he got. And it's a shame. I mean, I know many Elvis fans, I think you would agree too, is that there should have been a time when he just said enough is enough and took a long break. And got rid of the Colonel. I'm sorry, I'm not sympathetic on the Colonel. I think the Colonel, I don't care how popular Tom Hanks is, I just don't particularly care for the Colonel. I mean, yes, if it wasn't for Colonel, there'd be no Elvis, maybe, but it would never be the phenomenon he was if it wasn't for Colonel Parker. But then again, I also, in the same breath, have to say Elvis may have lived longer had it not been for the Colonel, because it was just a push, and here's all the proof and evidence to show it. And
it led to boredom, is what the problem was. Had Colonel relented and allowed for an international tour, because that's the idea I've researched. The idea behind buying the Lisa Marie was the ability to fly to other countries for potential personal appearances,
right?
And that would have at least reignited Elvis's interest and kept him going longer.
And the Colonel stopped a lot of that. And you can see in these paperwork, some of the comments that are made to Al and made to Tom Diskin, just the push that you can feel from all of the orders and the organization and the drive that the Colonel had to make money. It's got to be the answer, the reason why Elvis was pushed to his limits. And so much that, he could only do what he could do, and he was human. And so whenever somebody says, Elvis was a drug addict, he died like, Jimi Hendrix or Joplin, I go, yeah, give me a break. This is a man who was a victim of his fame. That, I don't know if you agree with that, but I think fame killed him. And he was a country boy. He just didn't have the know-how and the knowledge to be able to sit back and go, stop it. But anyway, great show. Thank you again for being a part of it.
Thank you for letting me be a part of it.
And I want to tell everybody to, keep in mind that, again, all of this stuff, a lot of the souvenirs that I have and everything are for sale. So don't forget to send me your inquiries and want lists to collectingtheking@gmail.com for pricing, shipping, and payment details. We have over 1,000 Elvis 45 CDs and LPs in stock, as well as RCA promotional items, sheet music, authentic Las Vegas and tour souvenirs, and more. We don't have a list or catalog available, which is why we encourage you to send inquiries and want lists. If we don't have something you're looking for, we might be able to find it for you. So don't forget to contact us at collectingtheking@gmail.com. Also, make sure that you subscribe to the channel and like the channel. And somebody told me there was a bell or something that you could hit that sends you an immediate reminder about the show. You guys probably know better about that than I do, but anything that you can do to help support the show, do it. And I would deeply appreciate that. Okay, so I guess that about wraps it up. Michael, thank you again for doing the camera work. And
ladies and gentlemen, Elvis has left the building. Thank you and good night.